Feelings Tigers podcast episode.
Well, everyone used to talk about the D1 or bust guys, like, and there was still some, but like, if you're D1 or bust now, you might not ever play college baseball.
Yeah.
Because like, even when we talked about that directors meeting, I mean, we can talk about the trickle down, but you know what's going to be loaded.
Mm-hmm.
Junior colleges are going to be absolutely loaded because now people that are going to think that's where they have to go to then get to D1. And so that's where, I mean, because those,
They don't have to. That rule change where they could transfer was a huge game changer for a lot of kids. Because I mean, now I can go.
They won't understand.
Yeah, they don't understand the rule of it.
they won't understand that.
The only downside to that going to a 4-year is the transfer credits. Because if I go to junior college, I can get my AA and like it completely transfers and they can't question me and they can't take away credits from me and make me pay more money. You know, that's the only advantage that you have going to junior college versus going to a 4-year.
Yeah, it's going to be tough, and I mean, a lot of these people. I mean,
Dane could that Southern A might not be the last stop for Dane. Like that's it might not be that is a reality, which is crazy to think about.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is Dane's not built like that. Like, I mean, I actually even think Dane would stay at Swick 2 more years if they would, somewhat let him. I mean, but that's the way people are with, and I think you have that certain type of kid, and you have to make those choices.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's not in a good place. I don't like it.
Yeah. Do you want to jump in this conversation?
Sure. Yeah, let's do it.
I'm doing a little bit differently from a podcast standpoint. I just want this to be more of a free flow conversation, and I want to highlight our coaches inside of the org. And the reason that I wanted you to be one of my first interviews was because I really do love how you approach the high school realm and how you approach kids in general. It's kind of like a crossover between pro style versus college. And then you kind of mix in a little bit of high school aspects into it. So you still feel that comfort of playing in high school baseball. But like the expectation is that you deliver is huge for a lot of guys. And I think that's a huge, it's underrated in a lot of aspects when teaching people. So I wanted to, I guess the first question I want to jump into is like, what's your philosophy and how has that philosophy kind of developed over the years?
Man, I don't know that I have an exact philosophy on anything. I think just I want to see kids succeed and give all the effort that they can, in playing the game right. And I think that I try to come across in that way. Simple things, like running on and off the field, hustling out all the ground balls, making the plays that you're supposed to make and then not letting it affect you if it doesn't, just, short memories and responding back. Having a plan when you go up to hit and, battling when you got 2 strikes. I think just the things, you talk about gritty or anything like that, but just, I think if you overall teach and ask the kids to play the right way, I think there's going to be success. And the success isn't always, when it comes to wins and losses, but I think you're going to be in games. When you do that, same thing, just defensively or pitchers, throwing strikes, competing in the zone, understanding as a pitcher that hitting is hard, and that you have a support system behind you that, there's been a lot of balls that have been nuked off the bat to, have your shortstop make a great play or outfielders run balls down and, don't give up free stuff. Don't give up the walks and the pass balls and stuff like that. And I think if you kind of have that really simple philosophy, if that's what the philosophy is, I think there's a lot of success. And I think you see so many people um, stress and fail, when they try to go in there, without a plan or trying to do something like super impressive. I mean, how many taking these big daddy hacks, in a 1-2 count and they strike out and they're going back to the dugout. Because once again, as we talk about, putting the ball in play, good things happen. And so I really think just simplifying the game. And then, having said that, watching kids even playing simple, or following some of those things are just super talented, that the simple, it becomes extraordinary when they make it happen. I don't know if that makes sense.
It does.
Like I said, I really have just such a simple approach when it comes to it. But then again, I also,
Is that intentional or is that just who you are as a person?
I think it's who I am. I mean, even when we talk about lessons and stuff like that, one of the first things, if I'm teaching a, 7-year-old or an 8-year-old in lessons, and I'll talk to the parents and I'm like, I'm really just trying to teach them how to take the big part of the barrel to the paw. I don't get into all the real technical stuff because we know the swings are going to change. I mean, just when we talk about high school and college kids, their swings are still going to change at that point in time as well, whether it be because of their physique or whether it be because, these great hitting coaches in college and different things like that are going to make some adjustments. I mean, so, really just teaching the simple part of, back pass, but getting the big part to the ball, hand eye, bat to ball skills, stuff like that. Same thing with pitching, don't have this dominating curveball at 15-year-old because it doesn't play the same when you're 19. Um,
So
you
so what's your philosophy on teaching young pitchers? I mean, I guess like that's kind of the game always starts with pitching, right? Pitching and defense. So like, how do you relay that message to 12 to 15-year-olds who are facing guys that are throwing curveballs and all this junk, and then you're saying, hey, just stick to the plan, let's just throw fastballs and get out. Like, is that something that you preach, or is it something like, oh, we're only going to introduce a curveball every once in a while?
I think a lot of it really, when I do a lot of the teaching that I do when it comes to pitching, it's direction and movement.
Okay. Expand on that direction and movement. What do you mean by that?
Yeah. Yeah. So when you're talking about direction, you're trying to throw a ball as hard as you can or whatever it could be towards the catcher's mitt. Then all of your momentum needs to be moving towards that, the mitt, the where you're trying to throw. And you see so many of these guys that, they fall off way to the left, right? Because it's comfortable, it opens up their arm slot, this way. And try to tell people, and I'm not sure on the video, I can't see myself right now. I always talk about it. If you're carrying in groceries, you don't carry in the groceries like this, right? You carry them in, compact and towards the movement because you're a little bit weaker on this side of it. And I see so many kids, that are falling off this way.
It extends your thumb out, right? It extends your body away from you. Like as the ball as you start moving away, the ball works away from your body. So technically, you wouldn't have as much strength as you start moving towards the
Absolutely.
forward progression. Yeah.
And I think we talk a lot about that. And then of course, having the legs underneath of you, I've always said, God gives you a certain amount of talent inside of your arm. And then if you really want to throw harder, it's in that legs and the core stuff. And then that's how you develop it and that's how you throw harder. I've still really haven't been able to find exercises that someone can go do that really makes their arms stronger. Like bench press stuff, there's not a ton of stuff that makes your arms stronger, but how do, these guys, these pros, these college guys, start throwing the ball harder? Sure, there's programs and stuff like that that help, but the reality of it is they're working on their core, they're working on their legs, they're working on, when to plant, when to be at the strongest movements that they can. So back to simplifying that stuff, when I'm teaching it at a level, like a younger age level, I mean, I'm working on, you know, making sure that they have all the simple stuff, moving towards it being strong with the bottom with the base, and then really working on location. Um, put the ball where you want to put it, have it come out to where it, the outcome of where you want to be able to throw it. I'm not against curveballs or changeups or anything at the other level, because I think even if you can put the ball where you want it, you got to give the batter, um, different varieties that kind of mess with, the change of speed, the little bit of a rotation, you know, different things like that. We go back and talk about the 13 to 15, these guys that throw big hooking, 62-mile-an-hour breaking balls that look great. And, they call them O2, and, the kids are completely fooled. They're not fooled at 16, 17, even playing at a high school level on that part of it. They can make adjustments. You know, those curveballs that look like a strike and then are dying out of the strike zone later on start to play really good. I mean, why do you see, major league batters, swing at balls that land 2 feet before home plate, because of what that type of thing looks like. But it all starts with direction, because, they can throw a fastball down in the zone and put the ball where they want, and then all of a sudden they throw a ball that looks like a fastball going down in that zone again that they have to swing at, that just dies and lands before the plate. And so I think, again, it's just at an early age and as they progress, like, the basics of still has to be there. I have some friends that laugh all the time, of some people that put some recruiting visit or videos up that, they put their spin rate and they put their max fastball, stuff like that, but they show themselves in the video and they throw 5 pitches, none of them were strikes. And so we always kind of laugh about some different things, when we see stuff like that. Now, don't get me wrong, a lot of that stuff plays, but back where you're talking about coaching, coaching is different than showcasing a kid. And, do the things that help the team and help yourself. And, a lot of that's throwing strikes, putting the ball where you want, making them hit the pitches that you want them to hit. And, um, once again, going to go back to where you asked me about philosophy. And I think it's just simplifying as many things that you can.
It's almost like you're cutting through all the noise, right? You're cutting through all that noise that's crowding out the actual conversation, which is how do you actually win ball games?
Yeah, I mean, baseball, is a really simple game. There's the movies out there that, that have the famous quotes, you throw the ball, you hit the ball, you catch the ball. And really, it is that simple. And, I think a lot of times you know, we put too much stuff on our plates as coaches, and then of course as the players and different things like that, to try to think that we have to reinvent the wheel. And sometimes you just, teach the basics and see what happens. And hopefully your, talent and effort and everything, is going to show and hopefully give you, the score outcomes sometimes that you're looking for when it comes to that.
Does your approach change based on players and their personalities and characteristics? Or do you pretty much say, hey, this is how I'm approaching it, and then the players adjust to your approach?
No, I think it's very important as a coach or as a person or any type of mentor that you handle any kid differently. And I think baseball is one of the definite sports where I do not believe in any type of cookie cutter approach. I think there's expectations, and the expectations come with the hustle, and I expect pitchers to throw strikes, and good attitudes. All those expectations or that approach, I think is the one type of understanding. But I think as far as how you handle each kid and different kids have different, one might be a little more fiery, one might be, really quiet, one might be, gets down on himself. And I think you have to handle that differently, but it's still telling the same message of the expectancy that you have, overall for the team, and how the team will respond to, their attitude or their fiery. I mean, you always have the I don't want to call them cheerleaders, but you have the guys that are vocal and loud and fiery, but then you have some guys that are, really quiet and just go about their business, and they both might be um, equal talent, or, the best player and the second best player, and they're both needed. I always think one of the worst things is to have a really quiet dugout, but then sometimes you look down at some kids and you just understand they're just not talkative or fiery kids. And
Uh-huh.
it's okay. It's not, you can't change them into that. That's just their, different personalities. And I think the same thing you have with, coaches and different things. Like when I see a coach that's fiery and jumps around, and I look and I'm like, man, I bet a lot of kids respond well. I don't judge him that he's doing that wrong, because say maybe I'm a quieter guy, or something like that. That's not, I think the styles um are really good. And that's why I said I don't know that there's um a direct way for anyone to do a certain thing. I think, and I'm sure, so many coaches inside of the Tigers in general, everyone has, different styles, and you could look back to see how many are successful and how many of them are not the same.
I feel like fiery is like sexy, right? Like everyone wants like a fiery coach or a fiery player, but I feel like that roller coaster kind of burns out at some point. Like you're going to get a lot of wins that way. But if you look at like a lot of the top coaches, like Phil Jackson, eh, look at, yeah, Nick Saban, Popovich, Bill Belichick, all of those guys' demeanors, even Tony La Russa, all those guys' demeanors are very reserved, and then they're fiery when they need to be fiery. Would you say like that's a fair assessment on like that are continuing winning?
Think about their sound bites. They're hilarious because they're normally so short with such a powerful meaning. Like when they're getting on somebody, or when they're
Simple. It's there's a lot of depth. There's a lot of depth to what they say. Like you can hear it in their tone. Like, oh, he said this, but in reality, he really means all of this. Like there's like a basically a laundry list of things that you need to figure your stuff out.
and then look at the different players that are associated on that particular team, back to the approach and the hopefully not a cookie cutter. I mean, they have the same type of players, right? They have these, NFL or NBA superstars, and some of them are really reserved. Some of them are, all over the limelight. Some of them are very glitzy and showy. And that guy is even keel, coaching all of them and expecting the same, results out of each one of them. I think that's a very good example of, but then again, then you see some of the other ones. I mean, I think like Dabo Sweeney, he's a little more fiery. And I mean, man, you look at that guy and you're like, man, I would, and I'm not a
Was it championships I see one though? Like that's kind of like how that's kind of like the standard is like what's the championship? Like John Wooden, he won all these championships. Like I think another one is Bobby Knight. Like here, let me do a screen share. Let's see. I want to see what we're looking at here on um guys that are out there. Oh crap.
but also, I mean, for you and I, and of course we're getting a little older now, but I look back at, some of those guys and I'd be like, I would like to go play for that guy.
Okay.
I mean, like Sweeney. I mean, even back in the day, and I'm a Michigan fan, so I don't like Ohio State, but Woody Hayes, like he was fiery. He was a winner. So there's people out there that you look at that have those different types of demeanors and coaching styles that, looks like that would be a person that you would want to go play for. But then again, the other guys are also great. My high school coach was one of the quiet guys in baseball. And I still, will go down and say that, he was my favorite coach that I ever had. Um, so,
So
you know,
Bobby Knight, so Bobby Knight
you won 3.
won 3 championships, and then who was the other guy that you wanted?
We were asking about,
Yeah,
I think Clemson has only won 1.
how do you spell his last name? Sweet.
Winney.
He's won 2.
Did he win 2?
He won 2. So, like, I mean, I guess there is a point where that fieriness comes out and it really triggers players to win. But at the same time, I just feel like that's going to burn you more than help you. If like you have to target it the right way. Because I mean, look at Popovich, Phil Jackson, like those guys that are just continually at the top of the mountain and stay there. Like there's a formula there that they got that a lot of people don't get. You know, because I mean, if you're winning 10, 8, 7 championships, you've got some consistent formula, and I think it's in the demeanor of the coach. Would you agree with that?
Well, I think you see a lot of these. I would, and I think you would see a lot of these guys that have the success normally are branching off the same tree, right? I mean, how many guys have coached under Belichick that or they coach together, or some of the different trees then expand, and then obviously there's a really good way, So I think it goes back to a lot of what we're talking about here is. When we talk about, let's just say the Tigers, obviously we're inside of this series. One of the things that I feel like we work towards, I don't know that we work hard towards it, but we work towards it, is we want to have those philosophies and what has worked, inside of all the different groups to be able to push it down to all of our coaches. And then be able to put a little bit of their own flavor onto, themselves. But, I think that there's still goal oriented, that starts, let's just say it starts with Jaws that, that we're trying to instill in, all the teams at a certain level, whether it's high school or all the way down to how we're starting the youth, teams up. And then of course, then we want to be able to send these kids to, or play in high school and then send them to the colleges and be able to, be happy with the type of kids and the type of feedbacks that we get from our players that have went on to play. And, hopefully, we had an impact on not only just their skill sets, but, their development as kids and young men.
I think they also feed off of, like, if you feel concerned or feel fearful or feel like there's something wrong, I feel like kids can sense that pretty well. Players can sense that. And by sure, I think parents can sense that as well. So when you have that reserved demeanor and knowing that everything's fine and kind of play this big picture outlook of trying to develop humans rather than trying to create wins, which I think that's ultimately, obviously, that's what a lot of good coaches do. I feel like the winning takes care of itself. And then to push over to a championship is keeping that same demeanor all the way through the playoffs and whether you're a bracket player or whatever.
Well, I think that's a really good point. And I think, I mean, even to take back championships, especially at high school, I think they're really hard to win. And they're really hard to win unless you're going to carry so many kids and so deep. And I, one of the things for the couple groups that I've coached here in Southern Indiana, one of the things, depending on how many players we had, it was just like we go out and we try to win every game that we can play in. When we run out of pitching, or we have any injuries and, we have to play players and we get beat because we run out of that, that's fine. You know, we went out and we played really well in the pool play. We set ourselves up to, be able to go 1 or 2 games deep into a bracket. And then after that, it's just, see what happens. And, but then also when we play those third games and you got a guy who's your number 9 pitcher, a two-way guy, number 9, but when he steps out on the mound, I think for me, I still haven't expected to see this be like, we got to make these guys still beat us. So even if you're the number 9 guy, go out and throw strikes, see if we can make some plays. And then we're still going to, have the same type of offensive approach. And that's been successful on a lot of the teams that I've been able to coach. And, there's kids that were like, well, I'm not really a pitcher. Well, you pitch when you're, that's something we can work on. So, you can throw it over the plate and make sure that that hitting's hard.
I was thinking about this. We're talking about staff earlier today, and I just wish there was more adjustability from players, because I think that carries over into real life situations where a coach comes up to a player and be like, "Hey, we need you to pitch this inning." The player shouldn't be like, "Oh, I don't pitch." It should be, "Okay, I'll go pitch." I still remember, I don't know if I ever told you this story. I might have told you offhand, but I was playing pro ball. It was my first season, and we were in Lincoln, Nebraska, playing the Lincoln Salt Dogs. And it was the 8th inning, and I was playing second base. And my coach comes up to me like, "Hey, we need to make a defensive switch. I want this guy to be going into shortstop, so we're gonna flip our shortstop to second base. And I know that you play outfield. Have you ever played left field before?" And without hesitation, I said, "Yep, I play left field. Never played an inning in it in my life ever." And this is a professional baseball game, so I'm getting paid to go play this position. So I go out there and I'm thinking to myself, the ball is going to find me at some point in this inning. I don't know when, but it's going to find me, and it's probably going to be in a big moment, and I've got to be prepared. I end up robbing my first home run in that game. And the only way that happens is if I say yes to the coach's answer. It's not me saying, "Oh, I've never played that position," because if I say that, guess what happens? I'm on the bench, and he's gonna put another person in there who says yes. I would be really concerned if my like Era or Shia would go in a game and a coach comes up to them and they're like 10 or 12 years old, and the coach says, "Hey, you're gonna go play left field," and they say, "I don't play left field." I would be really concerned, like, "Hey, no, you play left field, you play center field, you play right field, you play catcher, you play all the positions." Because are you going to fail? Absolutely. You're more than likely you're going to fail. The probability of you failing is going to be high. I'm not going to tell them this, but the probability of you failing and the expectations of that for me is like, you might struggle. But at the end of the day, like it's teaching you a valuable lesson, is that you're going to figure something out, and the next time you get to that spot, you're going to figure out how to make that position work. And you're probably going to spend time outside of games to go work on skill sets that fit that position. And I think that translates really, really well when you are outside of sports, because you never know when your owner or your boss is going to come up to you and be like, "Hey, can you work on this project?" Like, "Yeah, I can work on that project. I'll figure it out." Like, I'm going to make sure it happens, because I can't let that opportunity slip, because I don't know if that opportunity is going to lead me to another opportunity that leads me to this big moment that is life-changing. It's just
Go back to you not being one dimensional. I think
100%.
that are outside of your comfort zone. I mean, it would be almost like saying, I need a guy to have a backside hit here, or move the runners. Oh, I'm a pull hitter, coach. Well, you just lost some. I think that's a good example of just, you got to be outside of your comfort zone. But then in the same thing, I can try. I mean, in that same thing, I think you answered it like, heck yes, I can play left field, but at least you don't say no.
Yeah.
I've messed around there a little bit, coach, but I'll certainly give you 100%. Great. I love you, Spiker. Go to left field, right?
Because his
But
expectation, like if you think about the expectations for that, like technically, I mean, he's my boss. Like in that position, he's my boss. His expectations are not great. Like I don't think that he has high expectations that I'm going to end up playing that position as an all-star and be nominated to play left field in our league's all-star game. But he was in a tough spot, so all he was looking for was someone to say yes. And I'm that person. I think that carries really, really well down to the 10s, the 11s, the 12s, 13s. It gives them, it empowers them. I feel like, because it empowers them for opportunity. And then if they fail, you as a parent or as a coach get the opportunity to congratulate them on saying you took the chance and you learned a lot from it, and let's move on and get better from it. I mean, I think you're going to figure it out. You're going to end up, because at the end of the day, humans love winning. So they're going to try to figure out how to win. They're not going to go out there and just mess it up.
I watched a football game yesterday, and I can't remember which one it was, but there was a guy they were talking about that they moved him to inside linebacker. It might have been the Steelers game, and I can't remember, but they were talking about he had never played inside linebacker, and they moved him to inside linebacker this year, and he's having an all-pro year. I mean, you're talking about a guy, and I don't remember who it was or how long he'd been there, but I mean, you're talking about a guy that went through college, went through high school, now, signed for millions of dollars, to probably be a defensive end or whatever he was. And the team went to him and said, move there. And now all of a sudden he's looking like an all pro, is like, yes, if this best helps the team, I'm going to move there. And I mean, you're talking about a guy that, like I said, he's probably 25, 28 years old, been playing the game in a certain position or, similar positions for several years. And they're moving him at the highest level to some place he's never played before, and he's succeeding.
It makes him 10 times more valuable to that team. Like he's not going to be on the trade deadline. He's not going to be the guy that gets traded. He's too valuable to the program. I mean, if he does that trade, he's probably going to get traded for good assets, and he's going to be in a better situation on his next team, because like he's added more value and more of a dynamic situation for the roster that the coach feels really comfortable with his roster. Because I mean, at the end of the day, you know how it is when you're coaching, you have a comfortability with the names that you put onto that lineup, and you feel really, really comfortable when you have someone that's very dynamic and is able to adjust to things pretty readily.
And I think you go back, and I think how we kind of started this conversation, when I coached the team growing up with Dane and Bishop and Noah and Yancey and all those guys, they would go back and tell you back when we were 13, 12, 13, all the way through 17, when we would have our different stations, whether it was, hitting or, even pitching, everyone threw.
Mm-hmm.
There was 3 kids that were never going to pitch. But when we were working on pitching, and we had the space and we would, hopefully do all that, everyone pitched. And I mean, even someone would look at me and be like, I'm not a pitcher. And I was like, we never know. And, kind of the same thing. And, go back to when they're 11, 12, 13, we'd work on infield and then we'd work on outfield, so you were never just a shortstop, or you were never just an outfielder and never just a first baseman. The way that I would run some of the practice back then, because, always wanted to be engaged, because same thing, if you're trying to keep people involved and everything else, you start working on outfield and the first baseman standing over there, what's he doing at the time? Because you only have so many coaches. It's not like, you have, at high school or college where, while we're doing outfield, he's getting ground. You don't have that ability, right? You have, one or two helpers, and you're going out and you're like, no. So everyone's going to go work on outfield. Everyone's going to work on infield, and
that's how a youth team should be created. Is like,
yeah,
you want them to be so dynamic. You don't want to be locked in on one position. I still remember one of our coaches. I was talking to him about just pitching in general, and like he goes, I don't know why these coaches have all this problem with finding pitching. I was like, what do you mean? Like, because this is me early in my career, and he's like, well, my thing when someone says I don't pitch, you're like, can you throw? And the person goes, yeah, like, you can pitch.
Yeah.
And then the kid goes, well, I don't know how to throw like off speed. That doesn't matter. I'll just throw fastballs. Like, I throw a BP to you every day, and I can still get guys out. And I only throw fastballs that are 50. So what are we talking about here? So just, if you can throw, you can pitch.
well, and I mean, listen, you were a middle infielder, and one of the things that you wanted was to always be ready. So if a guy is going to go up there and just chuck it over the plate, you had to be ready because the guys were going to hit it. Fielders,
Yeah.
fielders love pitchers that throw strikes.
Oh, 100%.
They don't want to stand out there all day, and 6-7 pitch counts and everything else just to see a strikeout or a walk. And
because all you really need is a 2-seam fastball, 4-seam fastball. That's it. And maybe you could kind of spice it up a little bit and put your fingers to one side and add a cutter in there just to make some type of movement. But like, that's really all you really need as a pitcher. You don't really need the loopy curveball or the changeup that just dies at the end. I mean, all that stuff will come when you get specialized in college. But like, I feel like when players say that they can't pitch, like, oh, I'll pitch. I'll just throw fastballs though. Like, I throw a 2-seam and a 4-seam. That's it.
well, it always goes back to the same thing. Everyone talks about crooked numbers, and we still say, like you said, hitting's hard. Very seldom, in a game, especially at the youth and intermediate ages, it's like, teams hit, 5-6 hits in a row and put up 4 or 5. Because there's normally some outs or something like that in between. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. There's really good teams and really good hitting teams. But where do you really see the 5 spots? You see 2 walks and there a pass ball, and then all of a sudden that's where, like someone would hit the big triple. And then on the triple, there's 2 outs, and then we throw a pass ball, and then that guy scores, and all of a sudden they get 5 or 6 runs, and they have like, 2 hits, and it's such a challenge to get over that, but then again, then you got to turn it offensively. You got to take what they give you. If they're gonna walk you or you're gonna get hit by a pitch, that's how you create, the big innings. And baseball's just such a fun game. I mean, when it comes to certain things like that, I mean,
It's a kind of a reverse thought process on this, is that the pressure really shouldn't be on the pitching. Like, it seems like there's a lot of pressure on the pitching, but if you throw the ball somewhere over the plate, something's going to happen. There's going to be a result that happens, whether that's a strike or a ball hit foul or put into play. The pressure is completely off of you now. So now it's up to the defense to make the play, because you have to trust the defense to make the play. So actually, there's more pressure playing shortstop, second base, center field, because that's where majority of the balls are being hit anyways. So as a pitcher, you shouldn't really have that much pressure at a young age, because there's not going to be a hitter that is going to be lights out and batting 700 in a tournament. It's extremely hard to do.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, even like when you get to the things, I mean, look at the guys that throw no hitters or perfect games. A lot of times, they throw a 9-inning game, 27 outs, and they have under 10 strikeouts, most of them, during those no hitters and stuff like that. So what are they doing? They have people off balance, hitting the pitches that you want to hit. Don't get me wrong. These guys have incredible stuff. I mean, I'm not, you can't take away anything from that, but it just really goes back. I mean, I think to how we started the conversation. It's just, for me, it's just play hard, play aggressive, but play it simple. Play it simple.
Are your expectations high, or are they like middle ground, or are they low?
I mean, I've always told this same story, and I would tell it to you. If you and I went to Cracker Barrel and we sat outside and we played checkers, I'm gonna win. I'm gonna beat you. You know, because I'm really competitive. I think that is a great characteristic in so many. I mean, I always, I hope my kids get that trait. I hope that they're all super competitive. I think that's such a good trait to have. So when I go with the expectation, yeah, I mean, I do. I think that my expectancy would be high. I hopefully will deliver it as is not um all that matters. I want them to be relaxed and not feel any pressure, but go out and play. But
That's huge. That's a really good point. Like that's but not it's the delivery.
I mean, I think with the national team, the last time that I had the meeting and I ever won that we ever have with the 17s, I'm like, wins and losses, they don't matter. We want to go out and do the best, but if they keep score, I want to have more runs than the other team, which, every game we play, they keep score. So, I say it, but I also mean it. I mean, like they don't matter, but if they're keeping score, then the goal is to have more runs than the other team. I mean, it's the same thing. You always bring a lot of stuff back and you talk about work, right? Or bosses, right? When we go to get ready to play a game and we go out and actually play the game, we have a goal. And one of our goals, is to work hard. Then the other goal is to, achieve the goal is to have more runs than the other team. So during that 2 hours, we expect to go out and work and do the things that we're supposed to do and then achieve our goal, which would be have more runs than the other team. And so I think that simple philosophy, and if we don't achieve the goal, then it's also we come back the next day and, try to do it again. So I don't know. I mean, I don't ever feel like I'm one that puts a lot of pressure on very many. I think I'm a fairly patient person, but I mean, deep down inside, and openly as well. I mean, I'm a very competitive person, and I want people to come across that to know that I do have an expectancy and that I do want to, play hard. One of the things that I think I come across too is I don't want to blame others for our failures. I mean, I don't want to blame the umpires. I don't want to blame the other parents who are loud and annoying. And, I see it all. I'm paying attention. Like, it bothers me when an umpire say is not very good or the other team's not respecting the game the way they should. But ultimately, we can just control our own controllables and, go out there and try to do the things that we can do.
It is hard, like not saying something to that kid or that coach or that parent that's kind of being annoying and not really respecting the game or respecting their opponents. It is very, very hard to do. But I feel like when you're silent, that silent assassin feels like you're always more on top than the other than they are. Um, if you have 10 chances, you're probably going to win 8 out of those 10 chances, and they're going to come up top twice. But yeah, it's a really good point. I think it's a good stopping point for this conversation. There's a lot more questions that we could kind of go into from a strategy perspective, a recruiting perspective, but I think we can kind of save that for a later date.
Sounds good.
So, anything you want to share on your end from Southern Indiana? Anything you'd like to let people know about?
No, I just think we're continually growing and doing the things that we're supposed to do here, along with everyone else across the Tiger Nation there. And um, I've been really fortunate here in Southern Indiana in the areas. It looks like our youth teams. I've got some really good coaches and really good teams. Starting at some young ages, you probably saw some of the fall championships from some younger teams or even runners up and stuff like that. So um, I think the pipeline's good here, and I think with a lot of different things that we have coming up with the national teams and Tiger Fest and overall growth here, along with everyone else, I think we're in good shape. I would also say if anybody has any questions, obviously feel free to reach out to me. Talking about any of our growth and development and coaching perspective. Feel free to contact me. I've definitely been doing this for a while and saw some things that work and some things that don't. And I can only give you some of the examples because every scenario is a little different.
How's the lumberyard doing?
Lumberyard's doing good. Now really starting to geared up for some of the winter and off season. A lot of, maybe some of the teams and players are going to shut down for a little bit, but um, Lumberyard's doing good. Got a lot of our, teams and, other people that are using it. Membership has been pretty good. And, um, got some good trainers. So we're doing pretty well.
Awesome. Awesome. All right, guys, we'll catch you in the next episode.